This is David Goldman, Asia Times Deputy Editor, speaking to you from New York City the evening of May 11th. Well, inflation panic is beginning, as you know, in these videos and in Asia Times. We've been warning that inflation is here, it's real, and it's dangerous, and it will lead to a serious crisis. To our voice now have been joined luminaries like Ray Dalio, Stanley Druckenmiller, and other hedge fund legends who are warning that the profligacy of Treasury borrowing and the structural problems of the U.S. economy will lead to a really serious crisis, one in which, for example, most federal revenues might be channeled into debt service as interest rates rise. Now, of course, the stock market today in the U.S. fell sharply, but it wasn't quite sure in which direction to fall. Tech shares, which have been the most correlated with interest rates, fell in the morning as interest rates rose, but then recovered towards the end of the day, and cyclicals got pummeled towards the close. And the problem here is that we know that the financial equivalent of an asteroid is going to hit the financial equivalent of the Earth, but we don't know where it will land and whom it will land on. For example, the Federal Reserve could do nothing, keep interest rates low, continue to buy trillions of dollars of Treasury securities, and inflation could keep rising with a consumer price index rate of increase of 5 to 10% by the end of the year. That's one scenario. Or, as Bill Dudley, the former president of the New York Fed, wrote earlier this week, the Federal Reserve could sharply increase interest rates to try to suppress inflation and throw the U.S. economy into recession. Or, as prices rise, American consumers could simply refuse to spend money. We've seen a very ambivalent attitude on the part of consumers as to what to do with their checks from the government. For example, they've paid down a huge amount of credit card debt this year. So we could see a consumer strike also leading to a recession, which would mean that interest rates would not go up. So very hard to know exactly where to position yourself here. Gold is not a particularly good hedge against inflation because gold is highly correlated with inflation index treasury yields. And if the Fed is expected to lean against inflation, those could go up. I still think the very best hedge is against the likelihood of rising interest rates. You can, for example, buy exchange-traded funds which trade inversely with Treasury prices. Let's look for a moment at the chart of the day. This gives you an idea of how broken the American economy is. According to the National Federation of Independent Business, the index of jobs hard to find on the part of their members, employees hard to find, rose to an all-time high, highest in the 50 years they've done the survey. Employers in small business are not hiring very much, that's the other line of the graph, because they can't find labor. Now, when the federal government gives you an extra $300 a week to stay at home on unemployment insurance, why should you go out and work, particularly when schools aren't open and you've got kids to take care of, and when COVID-19 is still a serious threat, and you may have a job which involves extensive contact with the public. So we have everything going wrong that can. We can't find labor, and we can't find capital inputs. We've got shortages of all major industrial inputs. Semiconductors, of course, are the biggest one, which has eaten into auto production. And we can't find workers. It's like the old joke, if we had some ham, we could have ham and eggs if we had some eggs. The U.S. economy is broken. The federal government is headed toward a fiscal train wreck. So be afraid, be very afraid. This is David Goldman speaking to you from New York City.